Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, and my co-host, keeping himself amused in these trying times by crafting almost plausible health advice on Facebook to trick the baby boomers, Doctor, not a real doctor, Luke Liddle. How are you doing today, Luke?
Good.
You know, things like face masks work, but only if you smear them in honey. The virus hates heat, so drink piping hot tea, have a bath in neat bleach. You know, these sort of things that are going around.
This is almost libelous, Rich.
People are saying it's Russia. It's actually Luke.
I mean, it's so funny you're joking that I'm doing that, Rich.
We've got a work group chat and a sort of neighborhood group chat, and both of them are it's just how many times per week I can go, actually, if you look at the BBC, they've already poo-pooed that. Tell people. I don't know how many times you can tell people in different ways. If it's not on a credible news source, just ignore it. It's probably a lie.
Did you? I recently heard. I think this was probably a few weeks back, but I was Kerry Hilson apparently put a post up on her social media saying that the coronavirus was spread by 5G networks, and then her management told her to take it down. So that was quite funny.
Oh yeah, that's another. That's a whole other strand of things, which is really.
It is not something we're probably going to get onto on our
show. No, I don't think so. So, not really much happening in the Wednesday world this week. Some more sort of dribs and drabs of interviews, but nothing even as interesting as we had last week, I would say.
Yeah, I can say it pretty much true. Can I add anything to that? And the answer is no, not really.
Yeah,
read an interview with Carlos Carvajal once again. Yeah, struggling to tell you any news, Rich.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Which means we can wander along to our sort of main feature, which is me taking us through through my favourite sort of 10 Wednesday goals of my lifetime. Luke sort of set himself the sort of artificial caveat of he had to have witnessed it live. I've not.
Artificial caveat. I thought this were the rules we agreed on, sir.
But also, what I've done is gone for 10 different goals. So there may have been goals in Luke's 10, might have made my top 10, but to sort of avoid repeating ourselves. And as we touched on, actually, there's so many important and interesting Wednesday goals when you actually spend the time to look at it. I ended up with a huge list that had about 30 goals on it, and I've winnowed that down to my 10 and honourable mentions. So I'll sort of kick things off, and please do interject and prod where you feel the need to, Luke. To start off, just a couple that didn't make the cut. I have very fond memories of Miguel Liera's free kick away against Huddersfield.
Oh yes,
that was an away day that we took in together.
The birth of the song that he wears a black head guard and he scores from 30 yards.
Yeah. Yes.
Liera.
And we had a Pizza Hut before the game. I don't know why that sticks in my memory, but we did. They've got a Pizza Hut on site
before the game?
At the John Smiths.
How was it?
It was it was all right. Hurried, because these things, you don't ever really have enough time for that sort of thing. But yeah, it was fine. But it was a real highlight of one of his time at Wednesday. I really loved Big Mig, and the fact that he was a sort of 6'2", 6'3" centre back that could just pearl in crosses and free kicks. What a treat! What a multifaceted chap, and he's now trying to flog some sort of skill headband thing where you kind of you wear a headband and there's a football on it and teaches you to do keepy uppies. What a great guy!
I love that. I love the I love the years of kids' toys, which is basically like a ball on a dog leash. It's fantastic. I don't really understand how it's actually going to make you any kind of better. In this week, when on social media, Fernando Forestieri shared a little dribbling tip where he's dribbling around his kids' toys inside his home as a way to, maybe if I practice that, I'll get as good as Fernando Forestieri in quarantine. Maybe that's the case.
A preview of next week's news: Fernando Forestieri tears hamstrings while slipping on a Furby.
It's a deep cut.
The Furby was heard to say, bleep, 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 bleep. We sort of talked with Marco Matthias last week about kind of a moment and that the moment being exciting and what it kind of proffers for the future. And one of the goals that was in that sort of category for me was Lucas João scoring against Brentford away in that first season.
Yes.
It just a tremendous solo effort and coming away thinking, what an amazing player we must have signed. But I do think that was the start of him being pretty badly mismanaged by Carlos, because I don't think Carlos liked him sort of stealing his shine. And then there was just lots of Ross Wallace efforts when you look through, but particularly his goal against Preston is absolutely incredible. Just cutting inside and slotting it into the near post in a way that the keeper just couldn't save it, even though he was pretty well positioned. That stood out a mile. So those are my
Lucas João goal against Brentford, just to interject. Enjoyable for the fact that he sends young future piglet Jack O'Connell, for a hot dog, and absolutely rolls him. And it just drips with swag, really.
It does.
The kind of both some kids. The fact that he does that little celebration afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was a real kind of like, was it a last minute gloss goal?
It was. I think it was a winner. I think it was 1-1 and he made it 2-1.
I thought it was 3-1. I thought he scored.
Maybe it was 3-1. Maybe it was. But you're looking it up.
Yeah. Oh no, he did win it. I thought it was a 3-1 goal.
Yeah, no, it was
and
one
it
of
was
those
last minute as well.
Yeah.
Last minute winner.
Yeah, it was a special moment, because that's why it was like, I think if it was the like cherry on top finish, that's one thing, but that much swagger when it matters so much is frankly ridiculous.
It is.
So this is me cheating slightly, but I've got a roll up into my number 10 position. So Chris Brunt was one of my favourite Wednesday players ever. And I've picked out a few of his goals, and then one of them is my number 10. So personally, his goal against Wrexham, which was a tremendous sort of deep free kick at Wrexham, was special to me because that was my sister, who I go to games with. That was the season that she got bitten by the Wednesday bug, and that game was her first game. So we were sat actually in the Wrexham end. I live close to North Wales. Wrexham's one of my kind of local teams. I do follow their results, same as I do Chester. But that 3-0 win against Wrexham was a real treat. It's crap being in with the home fans when you lose. It's really great fun when you win, because just sitting there with your little secret that you actually are really happy is a real treat. And yeah, Brunt curling in his effort in front of the Wednesday fans was the standout moment of that day. He also scored an incredible goal against Coventry from probably, I think he was just inside his own half, and he sort of volleyed it, looping it over the keeper. It was just amazing. One of the best things I've ever seen in football. But, kind of speculative as an effort. So the one that makes it into the top 10 is where he chipped the Leeds goalie from about 40 yards out at Elland Road, nicking the ball off the defender, dropping his shoulder and beating the defender. And at the same time, you actually see him look to see where the goalie is. And in a split second, he just, like a golf shot, wedges it just over the keeper into the far side of the goal. Absolutely wonderful goal, and a great player to have had at Wednesday for a time. Where did you had a period of sort of absconding, didn't you, Luke? Was Brunt? Did you miss all of Brunt?
I did miss all of Brunt, unfortunately. I think when I came in, the only Brunt news was basically remember a Star article about, in our... It was during that time, I think, it was kind of coming in with Brian Laws. It was essentially, I think, Dave Allen had kind of absconded. It just kind of took off. And I remember a piece of news about the fact that we were expecting a nice little follow-up payment for the Chris Brunt deal. And then basically the new, thinking, what riches we can do with this, because we were just beyond skint and needed to really spend some money on players, which never really happened. And we'd already budgeted for it, which was fantastic.
Oh, excellent, yeah. That was one of the interesting things when you sort of picking through trying to find video clips of some of these goals. One thing I will say is there won't be clips of all of the goals that I mentioned because, unfortunately, the football just wasn't as freely distributed at some of the periods of time that I'm talking about than it is now. It's a shame, but football sort of cottoned on late. All sport really has cottoned on late to the fact that actually letting people share the good bits of your sport is quite a good thing to do. It's taken a while, but used to be videos were hoiked down all the time. So, things like a sort of season review for that season would be lovely to have, but it doesn't seem to exist anywhere easily. So following that, actually both two of those, the second two of those goals were in our first season back in the Championship. But I do remember that first season back after we got promoted was pretty miserable. It was tough because we didn't spend any money. We had a team that finished fifth, and we didn't spend any money when we got promoted, really. Sturrock seemed to be always in some form of dispute with Dave Allen, which I would heartily be on Paul Sturrock's side in. Dave Allen seems like an awful, awful man. And we basically went straight into a relegation dogfight. We went from promotion to a relegation dogfight. But one of the standout moments of that next season, I've written horrible season, horrible game, horrible team to be in the mire with. It's a goal that Frankie Simek scored against Millwall away. It was just a win full of bile and schadenfreude. And as a result, I definitely sent a nasty message to Rod Liddle off the back of it as well. But Paul Sturrock had this thing where he thought, this was in the days of 5 subs, and he thought it was a waste to have a goalkeeper on the bench. It took away an option. You very rarely, it's quite rare a goalkeeper gets injured or gets sent off. So for the 1 or 2 times a season that happens, you'd better off having another player in the mix. And by and large, I think probably that was a good thing. But when your goalkeeper is David Lucas, who, we talk about people being made of biscuits, but he was made out of rusks. Something particularly soft and malleable in the biscuit family is what Dave Lucas's knees were made of by the time he ended up at Hillsborough.
His knees were not made for dunking then, Rich.
Absolutely not. Keep them away from your tea, whatever you do. But what happened was Bullen ended up in goal for, I think, all of the second half, maybe an hour of the game. Lee Bullen ended up in goal, and just about kept a clean sheet. They thought they'd scored. He took the goal kick after this sort of melee. They were still celebrating in the corner. There's a huge ruckus at their end of the pitch, and Frankie Simek came away with the goal and a win that was absolutely essential to us, because Millwall went down that season, I think, instead of us effectively, and so beating them at their place 1-0 was all important. And just football, I think I'm definitely one of those people that hates losing more than I love winning, but I do love winning. And it was just in like 10 seconds, you had the agony of, oh crap, we've let in a goal. What's this? How are we going to survive? To what's going on? What's this noise? Simek scored. And a lot of my big memories are actually Radio Sheffield have led me through them. That was an away day that I wasn't able to go to, so enjoyed through the excitement of Radio Sheffield, who, commentary-wise, by and large, do a splendid job, I've got to say.
So I'm just watching this goal back while you talk of it. It is something I've seen before in the past. There really is something that is so surreal that cameras can't really capture.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
You're just focusing on one piece of the whole thing. The whole entire game is happening in the periphery of this camera that's capturing this. So this is the only, outside of memories, this is the only thing we have that documents this.
Exactly.
And it's just so strange.
Because the camera zoomed in on the celebration.
Yeah, and then you've got basically like, how many have we got here? We've got 7 Millwall players celebrating on the side. And just kind of come to them and it just pans out. It's just some insane rugby game. Like, what the hell is going on here? It's just madness. And we go to the other end, but then actually knowing that fact, you're there thinking, it feels hard work that we managed to solve
nobody.
This
we still needed.
Because there's still Millwall players back.
Yeah. Like 2 or 3.
There's more than that near the end, I guess.
Near the end, definitely, yeah.
It's very ridiculous. But yeah.
But just incredible. And the relief was just unbelievable. Speaking of sticking on the sort of Schadenfreude theme, number 8, I've gone for Glenn Louvens scoring away at Newcastle on, I believe it was Boxing Day. It might have been New Year's Day. No, Boxing Day it would have been. It was an away day I went to. It was my first trip I've ever made to St James's Park, or as it's now called, Sports Directly Up, Mike Ashley's Chuff Stadium. And Newcastle were the Sky Sports favourite team for that season. Everything they did was wonderful, and they couldn't get enough of Rafa Benitez. And I think for the first time in living history, they were on TV more than Leeds United. And it just felt so good to go there and absolutely do a number on them. We were the better team against what was, far and away supposedly the best team in our league. Do you have many memories of that game?
I don't.
No.
Sorry, I can't contribute on this one.
That's okay. But basically, it was a bit of a scrappy goal, but it's the first goal Louvens ever scored for Wednesday, and I think it was in like his 100th game. Or something.
No, sorry, I do remember this one. Yeah, I do. Apologies.
So, there's a corner in, a header from Lees that tested the goalkeeper. Forestieri sort of recycled the ball quite cleverly, and Louvens nodded it in at the near post. And almost the best thing about the game though was John Joe Shelby afterwards sort of licking his wounds and telling himself that it would all be better in the Premiership, and teams don't do that in the Premier League. Just people in the Premier League, people stand off and let him have his one hard shot of the game before he drifts out of any meaningful existence in that same game. Oh dear. But yeah, so that was a slapping it up your for want of a better phrase, and that is a coarse, awful phrase. I'm sorry about that, but doing that to sort of the media darlings is just always a lovely thing to be able to do. Do you know somebody that didn't make my list or your list, but does deserve a sort of honourable mention of his own, is Jermaine Johnson?
I found it very difficult to look at my own list and not include something that was Jermaine. I tried to really include. So actually, there's something I almost kind of put in, maybe a little DVD extra. Here's a kind of deleted scene blooper, or maybe a little bit of some press interviews on a terrible film. But I would say the greatest miss, which is almost probably something we could probably quickly do between us in a different episode, but not the greatest miss in the way that I think that you can kind of think about this. So, do you remember the game in the game we went down where we played Preston?
Yes.
Do you remember that night game? So it was the game we lost 2-1, and Mickey Gray scored a really good free kick.
Yes, yeah.
Do you remember basically just an absolute impeccable daisy cutter at the top end from outside the box from Jermaine Johnson, which hit the post, came back to him nice symmetrically, and then he did the same shot again, which hit the post.
The post. Oh, yes. Oh,
it was
agonizing.
Phenomenally agonizing. Like, it really just exists in it's like the Schrodinger's cat of the cat is agonizing, the cat is phenomenal. It was both that in the same place. It's really one of those, looking back to, the referee should have given it a goal on artistic merit. I think, really, because it was just incredible.
Yeah. Oh man, that was tough. A tough watch.
But I really wanted to put Jermaine Johnson in somewhere, because Jermaine Johnson was such a, as previously said by a friend of the podcast, my old work colleague Paul, he's a mouse in a bucket. We just don't know what he's going to do.
He just didn't know what he was going to do, like that mouse in a bucket.
Mouse in a bucket. And a reference which he said was terrible on a previous podcast. But it kind of makes sense to me. I don't know. It's maybe both Schrodinger's cat of terrible and fantastic as well. But we just don't know. But he was, someone who we got on an absolute song and really just lifted the spirits with, someone who could be a bit of a game changer, someone who gave, a bit of speed and, just that skill of being able to run with the ball that quickly.
Yeah.
Is really kind of a little bit like, I feel like I talk about Chris O'Grady's. The thing I absolutely adored about Chris O'Grady was that little trick he would do where he had this exceptional kind of lovely cultured way of dragging the ball off with his foot, his instep, when he was kind of holding the ball up, and it just looked like 400 times better than what it was.
And it made him look...
it made him look like some real diamond in the rough. Like, it's a weird element to his game that made him look world class for those seconds. And I
A
think
bit like Dion
really,
Burke's chest.
yeah, exactly. Like there is weird nuances of players' skills that will never get captured in Football Manager,
No.
and nor should they be. Though it's a lovely special ability. I'd like to say maybe it could be like a special power, like that's just effective once every 8 games. 8 games in very small moments. Like it wins some very small, nuanced, insurmountable battles, basically.
Yes.
So anyway, I think that's a similar thing with Jermaine Johnson. Just actually, I think it's probably a skill set which I don't think we've seen anywhere else, or we see so rarely that it actually becomes something that's actually his own.
Yeah, I mean, his sort of pace can take you so far in the game, can't it? And he did play some time in the Premier League, sort of earlier on in his career, and that's how quick he was and how good he was at running with the ball. I think he didn't seem to have much control over anything else, but I think given enough chances, he produced some incredible goals for us. It's just it could go anywhere, couldn't it? It was just like that mouse in a bucket. My trouble with the mouse in the bucket analogy is, what are the options for a mouse in a bucket? Just to get into this, he's probably going to be in a bucket.
That's true. At least Jermaine Johnson would beam in. He did beam in some rather fantastic goals. So anyway, sorry.
Goals.
Are you going to? My favorite player at that point, and I had his name on the back of one of my earliest Wednesday shirts, which I don't know if I still have.
I thought it would be a shame if we talked about best Wednesday goals in our lifetime, and he didn't get a mention, even if there's not one standout effort. I think that was the tricky thing for me. I sort of came down to actually what goals have stuck with you, and there was no sort of pivotal important goal that I could remember of Jermaine Johnson's, even though you watch a highlights video backed by some dodgy reggae music on YouTube, and there's tons of really good goals. None of them have stuck with me in the way that the ones on my list have. They're ones that those moments are fond in my memory years and years later, even if maybe it wasn't that important in the end, or whatever. So the next goal on my list, speaking of people who were sort of occasionally effective in weird ways, scored by James Quinn, who spent, I think, about 8 months on loan with us, barely ever troubled the score sheet at all, despite being a striker, but kind of had a weird class to his play, particularly back to goal, a very sort of effective sort of kind of player. And his goal against Hull was really pivotal again in that promotion season. So we started off badly that season, then Sturrock came in and we hit an incredible run of form when Sturrock came in. But then Steve McLean got injured, and by the time we came to meet Hull, we hadn't won a game in 7. We were obviously missing our best goal scorer, and we were in real danger of slipping out of the playoffs with a game or 2 left to play. And Hull were right there with us. They could have overtaken us if they'd won that game. We went. Drew Talbot scored. We went into the lead. They equalised, which I think would have had them basically. It would have put us in a position where the last game of the season against Bristol City was absolutely pivotal. But a stoppage time winner from a man who never ever scored meant that we didn't have to worry about that last game of the season. We won 2-1 away at Hull. Again, this is a goal that is not particularly memorable in and of itself. It's scrappy, and from my perspective was enjoyed, in my room listening to Radio Sheffield, and then celebrated with a massive hug with Suze, because we knew we were in the playoffs as a result of that win. And the picture of Quinn kind of grabbing and shaking the net afterwards is one that sort of lives long in the memory. Another one, just sort of quickly, sort of, this is again a moment. Gary Medine against Chesterfield. I think I and lots of people who love football have a special place in your heart for kind of your lead striker. They're kind of the rock stars of the footballing world. You want to hear about their womanizing and their excesses and things like that. And Medine did all of that. And in particular, that first year under Megson, the first full season under Megson, he looked the business. I loved watching him. I didn't. By the time I was sort of aware and conscious, David Hirst was well and truly sort of on the way down in his career. I didn't get much of his kind of prime to enjoy. And I think Medine was the closest thing to kind of that sort of player. You were a fan of Big Gaz as well, weren't you, Luke?
I like Big Gaz. I love the... Did we ever figure out the name for the whole, thumb on the nose and pinky extended? The whole Geordie Shore.
The Geordie gesture.
Geordie gesture, yes.
But it felt like he was on a rocket to superstardom, and either we'd make loads of money out of him or we'd be there with him. And that goal against Chesterfield, scored from sort of 25 yards out, it felt like he scored it purely on the basis of his confidence. It wasn't a great effort. I think the keeper sort of palmed it into his own net, but it was just like, the assist came from his ego, and the second assist was his self-belief. He was just so full of it in the best possible way. And you need that from strikers. They need to be selfish and up themselves to be really good at what they do. And for a time, he was absolutely that. Sadly, it all kind of fell away, and there was all sorts. Obviously, we all know the issues and problems that he had at the end of his time at Wednesday. I also just enjoyed. He got a double against. Was it Cardiff? Maybe, but it was Dave Jones was. This is like just before he kind of in the midst of his troubles, really. But he scored and was giving the big eye, the big one to the manager at the time in Dave Jones. It's really incredible to see. Fat old Dave Jones almost getting into a punch-up with his own star striker. Anyway, let's move along from Big Gaz to another Big Gaz, but in a different way. Hooper versus Birmingham. Another away day. So truly horrible.
Yes.
Pitch was sodden, just constant rain. They were using some sort of big foam roller to try and keep the match from happening, keep the match on. Bits of the pitch were bare and pulling up in places, and the ball wasn't rolling truly in a lot of places. We were second best for probably about an hour of the game and 1-0 down. And it was one of those transformative Atty appearances where he didn't manage to get on the score sheet, but really changed the way we were able to play when he came on. And the first goal was just some of the very best of Carlos ball, I think. Quick, incisive passing. Bannon has a 1-2 with Forestieri, feeds in Hooper. Just outside the box, he drops his shoulder, beats the two standing defenders, and then absolutely thumps it into the goal. Hit top corner, and just that beautiful aesthetic of it kissing the bar on the way in, just the icing on the cake. A very, very nice cake. It's such a great goal. And then obviously the game, we went on to win the game. Hooper scored again. It gave us the amazing Shocked Brummy meme that still lives with us today. And it was right at the height of the Hooper song, the Depeche Mode inspired Hooper song, which you went away from the match with that ringing in your ears. It was a great away day as part of a great season. Remember?
Yeah.
I remember texting you a picture, sending you a picture of them rolling the side of the pitch, because it was a pond, wasn't it? Basically. I think at the time we were losing, so I was hoping that the game might get called off when I was sending that. So we're
just
now
fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
that's a real kind of pivotal moment in Gary Hooper's time at Wednesday, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And just a real reflection on such a great player for us in those times.
And they talk about good players not needing, you don't need a huge wind up to produce that sort of power. I mean, he barely moves his foot to produce such an incredible shot. The keeper would have had no thought that it was going to end up where it ended up. It's a brilliant goal. To stick on that sort of, these are a mixture, obviously, of kind of great moments that came from goals and also just great bits of technique. And I think, technique-wise, it doesn't get much better than Reach and his goal against Aston Villa. We touched on it last week. It didn't qualify for your list for the aforementioned reason. I'm allowing myself this goal because we only just missed it. And the technique was out of this world.
And I think we did actually watch it on the streets of New York, didn't we?
Yes.
I think Eva brought it up on Twitter.
Yes.
We're starting to get to the time when technology is now allowing basically people to either record what's happening live and then, send us a GIF or, a short video on social media. So you and I did get to see the deliciousness that was Adam Reach's goal against Aston Villa.
Almost the seconds after it happened. Yeah, I think it's fine. But just incredible. 18 seconds from the kickoff, the usual sort of pass backwards, ending up with a thump up field from Westwood. Hooper sort of bails on going, challenging for the header, but sort of nudges his defender, so he heads it straight up in the air. Wallace snaps onto it and nudges it into the middle of the pitch, and Reach just steps onto the volley perfectly, lobbing the goalkeeper even though he was well positioned, swerving, dipping and dropping into the top corner. Just an amazing goal. Really brilliant. And all on our first morning in New York, and it set us off on a lovely trip.
It did indeed. And how about the fact that do you think it's interesting in that game how maybe wasn't it the best goal of that game? As it was the John McGinn goal, wasn't it?
Oh, the McGinn goal was unbelievable. Yeah. I don't know. It's horses for courses.
It is very close. I mean, obviously we would be biased, but that
McGinn goal was a real special one, definitely.
It was. I think it's but maybe it was a little bit frustrating for me again, that kind of situation with the Matthias goal, that the gloss was taken off it from the opposition scoring. Again, there needs to be more points given for artistic merit, really.
We had one of those so rare Jordan Rhodes goals, though, that made sure we won.
And that was quite a good goal as well. Probably
more of a kind of well-made team goal, wasn't it?
It was.
So we're entering my top three now. Number three, and I think for a treat, I will put the commentary, the Radio Sheffield commentary of this on, because it is really fun. It's Kieran Lee versus Rotherham.
Good choice, sir. Good choice. What a goal that is.
I mean, it was a crazy roller coaster of a game. Again, sort of outfought for probably the first hour. Then we sort of managed to scramble in an equaliser and instantly allowed them to score again. Then, Steve, do you want to see my welly? Evans limbers onto the pitch with his trousers falling down around his waist. And then not only do we equalise, but we get a winner. And what a winner. Kieran Lee's finish in that game, it's well worth repeat viewing. He gets played through the sort of a scramble after a corner, and we managed to sort of recycle the ball again. And Lee gets played, a lovely through ball gets played in for Lee, and just slots it under the goalkeeper like it is absolutely nothing, despite the fact it's like the 97th minute in a heated local derby, and he's just got the winner. It's unbelievable the ice that man has running through his veins at certain moments. They should sort of, when he shuffles off this mortal coil, they should do studies on Kieran Lee, because if you could bottle what he has in the 95th minute in the penalty area, you'd be able to sell it for a lot of money, I would think.
98th minute, according to the Sheffield Wednesday YouTube, which again, I'm just watching it back. Nice. Is that possibly the latest goal in Sheffield Wednesday's history, scoring? It's
got to be right up there, hasn't it? And there was a bit of a background, because that was Rotherham sort of moved into their new stadium. Their manager was giving it the big un. That now it was like Rotherham were the big team really in the region, and the Sheffield teams were on the way out and stuff. And there was so many, and Steve Evans was just such an unlikable thumb of a man. Just so much kind of fed into it. Oh, it was incredible to get that win. Incredible. So we're into the top two. I've got Wallace against Brighton in the home semi-final of the playoffs. Just an absolutely magical night. I think one of the saddest things looking back is how we wholly failed to capitalise on that tremendous feeling that went round Hillsborough that night. And it was the same feeling that we had actually after we lost the final against Hull. That my whole time being a Wednesday fan and kind of following, sort of looking at it was sort of the early days of message boards and things like that. So I spent a lot of time on Owls Talk, Owls Online, so there was a real schism in the fan base for a long time. There was there was the Black Balloon thing. There was Ken Bates. There was all this back and forth. Some people picked the chairman's side, Dave Allen's side in it. Other people were on the fan side, and just all this sort of stuff was there. That's all the history. And on those two occasions, it was just like, do you know what? None of that. It's all nonsense. If we can get it right on the football pitch, it's all nonsense. We all want this team to go and do well, and that's kind of the only thing that matters, really. And that night just sort of summed it up, and it was you could. The feeling in the stadium was unbelievable, and the fact that I think there was 3 Brighton players went down injured. And it was just almost like they just couldn't take the pressure and intensity from the team, obviously, but from the fans as well. We just wanted it so much more than Brighton. It was tangible. And that goal is just wonderful. And the fact that we had all the cameras in the stadium mean that, when Wallace unleashes that half volley that sort of curls away from one defender, 2 defenders, and then the goalkeeper. The beautiful thing is we've got the camera angle right behind Wallace, so you can watch the ball going in, and you can watch almost Hollywood style the faces of the players as they reach out for this ball and miss it as it goes into the corner. Very reminiscent of Cantona's goal in the FA Cup final against the Liverpool Spice Boys. Just curling away. Everybody's trying to get something on it, and they just can't. They've misread the flight altogether. just a great goal and a great night, and another one in terms of kind of memes created. It's also, if you remember, Forestieri did his hands on head, because we'd had a perfectly good goal disallowed earlier in the game, and when Wallace was celebrating his, Forestieri went up and did like that. Oh no, it's been disallowed, which Wallace did believe for a brief moment, and that is something that still happens in our celebrations amongst the players all these years later. How was that night for you, sort of from afar?
It's really funny. I remember seeing the game. I remember being, I just felt so I was excited, but I felt so kind of external from it all.
Right.
Like, I think it really was definitely, especially that season, there was a lot of FOMO. Well, actually, not actually a fear, it's actually a ROMO. It's a realization of missing out.
Yes.
Like, the fact that I couldn't be there, for elements like that was disappointing to me. But still kind of drinking in and enjoying just everything that we kind of picked up on. I think it really probably manifests. I think it feels very apt that basically that season ended with my experience of trying to watch the playoff final.
Oh yeah.
I went to a local bar which was supposed to open at 8 a.m. to cover the game, which was at 3 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.
Mm.
And the bar didn't seem to open for another 10 minutes. We then got in, so already, apparently, from what people told me, I'd actually missed Wednesday's best spell of the game.
Right, yes, yeah.
And the internet connection for the service didn't work.
Oh, dear.
So I was sat there in a pub with 18 other Wednesdayites.
Oh my!
I counted them in Calgary. This was the Ship and Anchor, and one whole fan. One whole fan.
Which echoed the situation in the stadium.
Which was very true, yeah. And then some people managed to watch it on their phones.
Okay.
So I could hear the sound of people watching it on their phones.
Oh,
so I actually left about the 40th minute to go back to my then apartment and watch the rest on a dodgy stream, which is then, obviously when I saw the Diarmi goal.
Yeah.
It really felt, kudos to the pub. They actually gave me my pint for free.
Okay.
Because it was just so underwhelmingly poor.
Yeah.
Oh, so that adds just a little bit of salt to the story. I actually got into the pub at 8. I just walked straight in when people were waiting outside. So I'm like, why would I wait outside? And then the guy was like, how did you get in? I was like, I just walked in the door. And he's like, we're not ready yet. Just you have to leave.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, for fuck's sake. It was just such a tin pot experience of something that should have been huge, monumental. And I thought, if this was Liverpool or Man United or any of your glory hunting, teams in the bloody Prem, this wouldn't be happening. It was so annoying. So it's just put like a really bad taste for watching football in a bar. The only thing that I think's really kind of been outside of that was me and you watching Wednesday against beat Villa. That's with the New York Owls.
Yeah, that was a treat.
Which is a bit of a treat. So basically just to sum up, it so it was strange. I didn't really fully get the breadth of the moments. And actually, it was the season after they brought in iFollow, I believe.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't get to see some of the the Carvajal team in its stride and in its pomp.
Yeah. That's
those
really good.
moments of me getting to see those things outside of highlights were rare and far between, and a shame that I think the first game covered on iFollow was when we lost the first game of the season to Preston.
Right, yes.
Following season, which was just an incredibly underwhelming situation. That game already, without the fact that also it was the first iteration of iFollow, where you're watching with the no commentary, so it kind of feels like surreal. You're just getting you're just getting the noise from the crowd,
Right,
and also what would typically happen was it would get out of sync as well. So in the end, I just learned to just watch those games early on mute, basically, because I didn't want some crowd noise to spoil what was about to happen.
yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's that's very unfortunate timing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Well,
Maybe eventually with Cyclical Natures, maybe eventually the Wednesday Revolution will be televised, Rich.
oh, worldwide.
Worldwide, exactly, in HD and all your gubbins.
Oh, you gubbins. Thanks, Grandad. So my number one goal, controversial in some ways. It's a penalty.
Very, very, very interesting. This is very interesting.
Sports so rarely gives us the perfect story wrapped up in a bow, and when you apply that to Sheffield Wednesday, it counts double. But
Wow.
Steve McLean scoring against Hartlepool in the League One playoff final is about as close as it gets. He'd broken his foot on 19 goals. He'd been out for about 8 weeks. We'd basically lost hope of having him for the rest of the season. You know, he was going to fall short of that personal milestone, and the team had lost their best striker. And then wily old Paul Sturrock sprung a surprise on everyone, and McLean was on the bench on the day of the final. There's lots of, you could literally hear every time the team was read out, everybody that was new to the stadium for that period of time was sort of oh, McLean's playing, McLean's in the bench. You know, you just hear the chatter every single time that the team sheet was read out loud. Just a tangible excitement and maybe tangible worry on the side of the Hartlepool fans as well. We were trailing late on in the game. Seems to be a bit of a common theme. And Sturrock rolled the dice. At the 77th minute, he made all 3 of his subs. So he brought on Paddy Collins, Drew Talbot and Steve McLean. 5 minutes later, Drew Talbot won a penalty, and Hartlepool's captain, Ashley Westwood, was sent off as well. McLean steps up. He hadn't touched the ball after coming on. This is how I remember it anyway. So literally his first touch of a football in anger for 8 weeks is a penalty in the 83rd minute in this playoff final, and he puts it down the middle. The keeper got a touch, but no, there was no way he was saving it. He hit it well, much too hard. So he's got his 20 goals for the season. We obviously drew the sort of full time as a draw, and then we went on to win 4-2 with wonderful goals from Whelan and Talbot. But those two don't happen or matter if McLean doesn't get his goal. But it was just one of those things where it's like you try to spring that trick on teams, and you try and well he's going to be just about ready. We'll bring him on for a boost, or we'll name him on the team sheet for a boost. And then quite often they're just got nothing left, or they're not, they're miles away. I mean, I'm sure he was miles away from normal fitness and touch and things like that. He can't have been training at all. I mean, if you look at the dates and how long it takes to recover from that injury, he would have barely been able to kick a ball before the game. So just amazing that he was able to do it. And it is one of my one of my absolute favourite Wednesday memories. That was a special team. I think Sturrock was definitely one of these managers that managed to get way more than the sum of the parts out of that team. A very sort of likable chap as well. Maybe one of my favourites, or maybe my favourite Wednesday manager of my whole time sort of following the club. And that day out was amazing. It was such a gorgeous sunny day, and everybody was wearing blue and white because that's Hartlepool's colours as well as ours.
Yes.
And I think there was something special about Cardiff hosting those sort of games, because Wembley is, it's a tremendous stadium, it's a huge spectacle, but there's nothing there. There's no kind of, it doesn't have an atmosphere around it. It's in the middle of nowhere. Everything that's built is built to be close to Wembley. There's no culture, there's no vibe of its own. And the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff is the opposite of that. It's right in the hub, it's right in the city centre. So it was just fun to be in and around the city that day. Everybody was in such a good mood, and it all worked out for us. I mean, obviously, I would have felt differently if I was a Hartlepool fan about things, because it was a pretty soft penalty, but it all worked out for Wednesday, and it was an absolute treat to be a spectator of and part of the day. So there you go. That's my list, Luke.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
I felt you'd really laid down a gauntlet, you see, last week, and had to try and get somewhere near your high bar.
Just as a recap, I remembered this as you went into your second goal. But I think I want to say one thing we missed from the Kieran Lee 90 plus 8 minute, just as an addendum. The Paul Smith celebrating, that's his name,
yes.
Paul Smith, celebrating with the Wednesday fans. Paul Smith, ex-Wednesday physio. It is Paul Smith, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's great.
Lifelong Wednesdayite as well. Rejected from the academy, so had like a bit of a kind of failed footballing career, but an impeccably successful physio career. Obviously, he's the son of classic Sheffield Wednesday physio for the classic 90s team and the England team, Alan Smith as well.
Yes.
And so to just have that moment for him, to just go over and just celebrate with the team.
Well, as well, can you imagine what it's like having to subject yourself to an hour and a half of Steve Evans just sniping and whatever else, chuntering away, and especially when he thought he'd won the game. I bet the sort of explosion of excitement as a Wednesday fan died in the wall in that situation. Just amazing. Amazing to be part of, and it's lovely to see him join those celebrations, giving Kieran Lee a big kiss. Yeah, it's a great moment. I think what I would encourage people, it's been hugely enlightening to do what, picking out those favourite goals. I would encourage people to do a bit of that themselves, because it really lifts the spirits, I think, and that's what we all need a little bit of at this period of time.
I completely agree.
There's not much in the way of other business, really, is there, at this point, Luke?
There is not any AOB, as we would say in a work term. As I'm wearing my work headset, and the extension of work is now just invaded everybody's homes, because all of our lives happen in our homes now. This is what happens. This is what life is now.
Yes. But yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely a worthwhile and fun thing to do. Looking through some of those classic goals. Once again, where I can, I will. I'll drop them into the show notes so you can enjoy the ones that we've picked out. But yeah, have a little furrow around yourself. It's a rewarding experience. So yeah, on that note, I'm going to say, cheery bye, Luke.
Cheery bye to yourself, Rich.
Yeah, have a good week.
You too.
Look after yourself, folks.
Barry coming forward with a chance maybe to win it for Rotherham. It's Barry scored! Seconds after Wednesday equalised, Jordan Barry has won it for Rotherham. Steve Evans is on the pitch. Wednesday so careless at the back, but the Rotherham fans won't care. Jordan Barry scores, and it's Rotherham 2, Wednesday 1. McGugan, so a free kick, John, and a chance to get it into the box again.
Yeah, I'm sure McGugan's going to take this. It's out a little bit wider, probably similar to the Blackpool goal that he got.
Newell's in there, and just behind him is Tom Lees and Claude Dielna. McGugan's crosses it. Yes! Equaliser, it's Ati Newell in stoppage time for Wednesday. What an end to this game as Rotherham United take the lead with 3 minutes to go. But Sheffield Wednesday will not give in. And Ati Newell has equalised with minutes to spare in stoppage time. And it is Rotherham United 2, Sheffield Wednesday 2. And after all of that, it looks like it's going to end up in a 2-2 draw. We've had the 7 minutes on my watch. The referee will allow play to continue for a few seconds more. Headed up towards Newell. Newell's in there. Stevie May back heel to Kieran Lee. Oh! Lee wins it with the last kick of the game for Wednesday. It's unbelievable here at the New York Stadium. Wednesday scored twice in stoppage time, and they have won the South Yorkshire Derby. Rotherham 2, Wednesday 3. You will never see a finish like this again.